It's like that. It's a long one. It's a real commitment. Are you ready?
Are we ready?
Great. We're going to go ahead and get started again. Thank you very much, Dr. Matchin, for being here. We're so happy to have you and your colleagues. If you would, before you start your presentation, if you would take a second to introduce who you have with you, and then you can start at your leisure.
Thank you very much. On my far left is Rick Yost, who is former chair of the Faculty Senate at UF, who is heir apparent to the faculty representative on this body starting in August, I believe. Mac McGriff, the chair of the Board of Trustees, and to my right, Joe Glover, the university's provost. So thank you all very much for allowing us to talk about the University of Florida. I was listening to Dr. Bent's talk. I don't know if you could have picked two more opposite institutions. Maybe you did that on purpose. To have West Florida and their focus and their mission, and then have us follow them. So I guess I need to ask you all to forget about Dr. Bent's conversation. Because many of the things that apply for her and West Florida are really not applicable to the University of Florida. That is really one of the unique parts about the system of higher education state is the breadth of what we have. So I'm going to just kind of overview it for a second, and then Joe is going to talk primarily about our work plan. Then I will finish up with talking about the differential tuition ask. You've got this. Does everyone have the slides?
Yes.
So I'm going to go real quick and not go over them. But most of you know that we're big. We're comprehensive. We have a huge display of academic programs. We're both land grant, sea grant, and space grant in terms of the research and service focus that we have. We get a lot of attention paid to our research and our graduate education mission, which we're very proud of and which is very important to us and to the state. But don't forget, we graduated over 9,200 undergraduates last year. We have had, we'll always have a major commitment to undergraduate education. We think that we are trying hard to be cost effective and efficient. Our 82% six-year graduation rate ranks at the top or on the upper quintile, I think, of all public universities in the country. Our faculty-student ratio is something we're very focused on because we think that's a key indicator of academic quality. We're at 1 to 20, which we believe is too high, but it's still one that we've stayed very close to, even during this budget cutting time, to the point where we were willing to cut enrollment to maintain our faculty-student ratio. Another difference between us and other universities is we're full-time. 93% of our undergraduate students are full-time students at the University of Florida. So the point there is there really is a lot of diversity among the 11 universities, and you need to think of us at one end of some of those spectrums. Next slide, I guess, huh? This is just to make the point that we are not just located in the woods of North Florida. The University of Florida functions all over the state, both in terms of our health science mission and as well our land grant agricultural IFAS mission. All those dots show you where we're located. We are in every county in the state. And it's part of our point of emphasis, and it's also a point of some pride for us that we are out there trying to serve all the people of this state. Where are we going? We're going to try to continue to be one of the very best public universities in this country. We are committed to economic development in our state. We have, I think, a pretty good track record of that through the research and the intellectual property things that we've done. We can talk about some of those if time permitted. But we have taken a focus in the last 6 years on multidisciplinary approaches to teaching and education and research, because we think those are the ways that we're going to be able to solve some of the real big problems facing our nation. Joe's going to talk about these in some detail, but access is a specific and important part of our mission. We are committed to serving the people of the state of Florida. Health sciences and health care have been part of our mission from the get-go and remain so. We're increasingly recognized on the national and international stage for our research in the healthcare arena. Energy and sustainability, we are working on alternative sources of fuels as well as greening. We have been recognized as the greenest building university in the nation. We have more LEED certified buildings on our campus than any other campus in the nation. As you know, we're working on a cellulosic ethanol patent, and we have a plant being built up in Perry to try to develop that further. Our tech transfer is a model for the state and some parts of the country. And just yesterday, we broke ground on a new technology incubator that we're funding with our own funds and some matching federal funds. So I think, Joe, I'll turn the work plan conversation over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Machen. As you might imagine, University of Florida being an extremely large institution, there are a number of themes that run through the work plan, and so I'm going to touch on some of these very briefly. The President mentioned that we have a huge array of academic disciplines. This is not only a statistical point of pride that we are one of the most comprehensive universities in the nation. This allows us to do many things that most other universities in the nation cannot do. They simply cannot do them. If you look at our great successes in recent years, which include cancer and genetics, neuroscience, aging, nanotechnology, the Emerging Pathogens Institute, sustainability, energy, climate change, and water, what those all have in common is they must bring together a diversity of disciplines to work together. It is very rare to have on one campus a complete array of health sciences disciplines, the agricultural infrastructure that we have, the E&G institutions such as the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and Engineering. So to take one of these, for example, if in our Institute on Aging, which is one of our signature programs nationally recognized, we are a national leader in aging, you need, obviously, not only the contributions of doctors and nurses and public health officials, you actually need sociologists, demographers, and even people from building construction to talk about how you're going to build a building in which the aged can continue to live independently and with dignity. So one of the strengths of the University of Florida is its comprehensive nature. We will continue to build on that, and we will continue to leverage that asset where we can. We pay great attention to the undergraduate experience at the University of Florida. We have engaged a multi-year program to renew the undergraduate experience. Some of the highlights in that program include providing a UF experience that has a UF signature through common gen ed courses. We are in the process of creating an undergraduate office of research to provide more research experiences to undergraduates, which is considered to be one of the key signature aspects of a modern undergraduate education in the United States. We are producing new models to teach mathematics and science through the Howard Hughes Medical Institute Science for Life program that we're very proud to have received from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. We have just created a new program in the summer B term in which there's not been a lot of diversity and a lot of offerings that will invigorate both the educational and cultural aspects of the campus during summer B, and we are in the process of creating an undergraduate major in biomedical engineering. Most campuses, most engineering schools that have those majors, they grow to be half the College of Engineering. So we believe it's an extremely important addition to our portfolio. Is it this one? Okay. We are committed to helping the state expand access to higher education. Because our infrastructure in Gainesville is limited, we intend to do this primarily through distance education. We currently, and for some time, have had over 52 degree programs available through distance education. This is not 52 courses, this is 52 degree programs, mostly at the graduate level. We are planning a substantial expansion at the undergraduate level by engaging the services of an external distance education provider that we hope to have in place by July. We're also in conversation with various state college campuses around the state, and we hope to provide increasing access to bachelor's degrees in collaboration with them. I will mention that we are in the process of doubling the size of our doctor of veterinary medicine class from its current 88 to 160 over the next 4 years, and we're in conversation with the deans of our other professional schools to see if we can follow a similar program in those professions. We will continue to improve the graduation rate at the University of Florida. We are very proud of our 6-year rate, which is currently 82%. That's the best in the state and among the leaders in the nation. I should mention that A lot of the credit for this graduation rate goes to our universal tracking system, which is a best practice in the state of Florida and indeed in the nation. And so I would encourage anyone interested in improving their graduation rate to take a look at our system. One of the major assignments for the new Senior Vice President in the Health Sciences Center is to integrate the operations of the medical school and Shands Teaching Hospital, because we believe that there are a lot of efficiencies and opportunities for leverage there. We are a major spur to economic development in the state of Florida through our research and development exercises. As was mentioned, last year we brought in $574 million in external grants and contracts. That funds a huge research operation. We are committed not only to doing abstract research in the laboratory, but to translating it out into industry. Recently, we got a CTSI grant, which stands for a Clinical and Translational Sciences Institute grant for the National Institute of Health, that recognizes us as one of a relatively few universities in the country that is going to be engaged in a major way in translating new discoveries in the health sciences from the laboratory to the bedside. That is a major initiative. We have just broken ground for an innovation hub, which again will be in the job or in the process of translating our intellectual property into investments in the economy in the state of Florida. One of the key things that should be highlighted here is we will continue to invest in faculty. Faculty that's the underpinnings of everything we do. All of our success resides in the success of the faculty. We will do this to maintain strength and to develop our research and economic agenda. We will also do this to maintain and improve the student-faculty ratio. The University of Florida, as I've mentioned, its research enterprise is cutting edge. We continue to look at what are the developing fields that are important for us to move into. As I've mentioned, biomedical engineering is one. We have a task force of faculty right now who are looking at the field of computational biology and asking the question whether or not the university needs to invest in that for the future to remain on the cutting edge. We will engage with the world outside of Florida. We believe that it is important for our students to exit the University of Florida prepared to engage with the world, because the future of Florida is increasingly tied outside our borders. It's also important for our research agenda that we engage with the world outside. We actually have modest outposts abroad, currently in Paris and Beijing. We're exploring the possibility of an additional outpost in South Korea. And I think I'm ready for the next slide. Okay. Enrollment. In recent years, we have had a bump in enrollment running through the university. This has strained our infrastructure. It's strained our finances. You see now historically high numbers of undergraduates graduating from the university as this bump proceeds through. On-campus undergraduate degree production will return to a sustainable level consistent with the state budget, the campus infrastructure, and the student-faculty ratio, as the President has mentioned. Consistent with the university's focus on graduate programs and research, graduate degree production will maintain and increase slowly, consistent with the UF focus. As I mentioned previously, we will continue to provide access to degrees in the state of Florida through distance education. In 08-09, we awarded nearly 900 such degrees. So we are already a large provider of access through distance education, and we are committed to increasing that access at the undergraduate level. We are committed to growing professional education. We are one of the largest providers of professional degrees. We granted over 1,100 of them in 09-10. As I mentioned, we are expanding the veterinary medicine class from 88 to approximately 160. This is important not only for the care of small and large animals, but this is incredibly important from a homeland security point of view in securing the food chain and food safety in the state of Florida. I won't discuss in detail the degrees. The University of Florida, as always, is looking at revising It's inventory of degrees. These are some of the degrees that we're considering in the future for a variety of reasons. What was not asked for in the work plan are the degrees that we're eliminating. And we eliminate about as many degrees as we request, so we're maintaining a fairly stable inventory of degrees.
The Board of Trustees and the administration have developed a 5-year strategic plan based upon the economics that we foresee. What do we hope for? We hope that the state's budget will stabilize soon, hopefully already has. We are not optimistic about increases in the state budget, but we have all endured a significant amount of downturn, and we're hopeful that we can see a stability to the state budget going forward. The university realizes that it's going to have to be increasingly entrepreneurial. The state is not going to be able to go back to the funding model of the 1990s or even the early 2000s. We are going to have to do more ourselves. I think that was one of the realities the legislature faced when they devolved tuition authority to the Board of Governors and the Boards of Trustees. We will rely on the tuition model. We are very cognizant of its impact, and we are monitoring it very carefully. We will move to things that were also approved this session, like block tuition, block fees, and watch for market rate changes as we offer online courses to people from out of state and indeed out of country. We think there are significant revenue possibilities for the university through those mechanisms. We are also recognizing that we have to be more self-funded. We are not going to be able to make things happen the way they happened in the past. And we are not afraid to look at non-resident tuition. We have one of the smallest out-of-state enrollment cohorts of any flagship public institution. This year it will likely be less than 4% at the freshman class level. Many universities are significantly greater than that. This relates somewhat to what the state can afford to pay and the amount of money that the state will provide, because as you know, the out-of-state students will pay significantly greater tuition. Which gets us to our tuition request for this year. We would like to increase the differential by 7%. It's going to be used where it ought to be used to support faculty and advisors so that we can focus on our education and research product through increasing our faculty cohort. We expect to see a net increase in our faculty, even though we've endured 3 years of significant budget cuts, and we have allocated most of our resources to that cohort. We're very cognizant of the need to raise more need-based financial aid. We think that, and have been successful so far, in raising our 30% match from other than the tuition base, which allows us to plow that into the faculty side. We have a program called Florida Opportunity Scholars, which currently has 1,300 students. These are the first in their families to go to college and whose families make less than $40,000 a year. The university must raise $8 million every year to provide the funds for that program. Watching our financial aid posture as closely as we can, in the most recent report we have, remember, about 35,000 undergraduates. Only 15,000 of them demonstrated federal financial need thresholds, meaning that there is a bar that the federal government has which establishes your eligibility for federal financial aid. We only had 15,000, and we offered full financial aid packages to 99% of those students. The other 1% we think got lost somewhere. Basically, we are fully funding the financial need on a need basis for our students. We will continue to monitor this very carefully and make sure that we do it. Final point, in 2008 and 9, we had 7,734 undergraduates on Pell Grants. And in the past year, we had 3,200 receiving institutional need-based grants. So we are a significant provider of education for those who have limited means to go get a college education. We expect to continue to do that going forward. Madam Chair, as a dentist, I'm very sensitive to time because the next patient is out there in the waiting room. But if I'm not over and the patient's not out there waiting, we'd be happy to answer
questions. Why are you guys always
questions.
sensitive to time but not pain? I don't understand.
Thank you, President Matchin. I think Governor Duncan.
Dr. Glover, on the online programs, how are you differentiating? Is it the same admission requirements, or is it easier to get into an online program? Help me understand kind of how that growth model works. And
In general, most of our current programs are at the graduate level, and so, of course, each of those programs determines admission requirements just as they do on campus. As we move into the undergraduate programs, in general, we have kept so far largely the same admissions requirements that we have on campus or that we apply to transfer students. So there has been no great differential established in admissions requirements. That's not to say that might not happen in the future, but it has not happened to date.
is the capacity issue kind of the same? I mean, so say for an MBA, a graduate program, I mean, do you have a ton of applications for MBAs on campus and online, and you're culling through and have the same?
There are a number of different MBA programs which have a number of different requirements. So the major distance MBA programs cater to a clientele that really can't afford to come to campus and be resident for a period of time. So we have some that are completely asynchronous, that the people do them on their own time. We have others where the people come to campus on weekends. We have others where they come to campus once a month. So they choose the system that works best for them. And I think that's one of the points worth emphasizing about our distance ed program, is that we are trying to cater to people who cannot come and be residential four-year students at the University of Florida. We're catering to people who need to continue to work or who do these courses on their own time, on their own schedules. And so this is a segment of the population that traditionally the University of Florida has not been able to address, and that it's through that means that we're offering additional access.
And is the degree any differentiated? I mean, is it the
Absolutely
same?
not. Your diploma says University of Florida. There is no notation that has been done through this particular mechanism.
Thank you.
Governor Frank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The University of Florida has a great 6-year graduation rate, and you talked about something called the Universe Tracking System. I was wondering if you could possibly expound upon that just a little bit.
Sure. The Universal Tracking System was actually instituted at the University of Florida probably over 15 years ago under President Lombardi at the time. And it really rests on 3 pillars, which I can describe very briefly. It rests on having a map or a degree track, so that if you are a sociology major, you know exactly what you need to do in which order at what time to remain on track to a degree in a timely fashion. So that's the first pillar, the degree track. Second pillar is a proactive advising system. Our advisors do not sit in their offices and wait for a student in distress to show up. Their programs are monitored by the computer, and if the computer sees them getting off track, those students' records are flagged, and the advisors literally draw them into their offices, and they have a conversation about how to get back on track. The third pillar was a change in campus culture. If the students know what they need to take, when they need to take it, you need to make sure that they can get access to the courses. And so formerly, departments would schedule whatever courses they wanted to at whatever times. Now the departments understand that there is an expectation that if a student needs a seat in a course, that seat will be provided through our enrollment management system, and the departments all do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Governor Colson.
I think right now you're, and I'm not trying to, I know none of you all like these rankings, but you're ranked like 47th in the U.S. News amongst all universities, and I think 15 amongst publics. What do you think it would cost, and what would you do, and how long would it take to get into the 30s, or to get it to be ranked 10th among the public universities, to make a significant move?
We look at those indices very carefully. The one that we're way off base is the financial resources per student. We're no different in that regard than the other 11 universities in the state. This system does more with less than almost everyone else. And the main expenditure of those resources is for faculty. We need to move our faculty-student ratio at least to 1 to 18 in order to be in the same band with the top tier of publics at this point in time.
What would that cost?
You know, when I'm dreaming, I don't even want to go there. But it would take, what did we figure when we were dreaming about several hundred more faculty? We figure it costs $1 million to recruit and place a faculty member. No, $100,000. $100,000. So about $30 million would get us 300 new faculty.
A year.
That's recurring. Yeah, that's not a one-time deal. You know, they don't come and go; they come and stay.
And if you had that, you think you could move your university into the top 10 of the public?
Question. No question.
Governor Solano.
I actually have two questions. One, which is a follow-up on Governor Franklin's question about your tracking system. What happens to a student if they get off track? Or what are the consequences?
First of all, our summers are catch-up time. So a student who's off track can get back on track in the summer, no harm, no foul. If a student gets off track multiple times, 2, 3, 4 times, then the advisor is actually empowered to say, you can't be in this major anymore because you're clearly not making appropriate progress. And one of the systems that we have built into our computer system is a student can actually go degree shopping. A student can take his or her accomplishments or achieved courses, feed them into the system automatically, and the system will give the student a list of majors for which they're automatically on track. So the student can see, if I move from this major to this major, I'll be on track, I'm making good progress. And so we have a proactive way to help the students get back on track. If they're off multiple times, then we help them find a degree that they can do well in.
Okay, thank you. And my second question has to do with the faculty-student ratio, 1 to 20. Are these tenure-earning or tenured faculty that are included?
Yeah, those student-faculty ratios come off the IPEDS report, which is a national definition, and generally, yes, those are tenure-track faculty numbers that go into that computation.
Okay. And then secondly, particularly with respect to undergraduates, what's the average class size for undergraduate education?
I don't have that figure off the top of my head, and actually, I would suggest that if you're interested in that I not give an average number, which I think would be extremely misleading. I think you need to get a histogogram,
right?
Which
yes,
would be much
exactly.
more informative.
Yes, actually, I would prefer that, but I thought maybe you could sort of quickly give me an average. But
I've never computed that.
Yeah, I'd be kind of interested to see. I mean, I know obviously some majors are going to have very small class sections and others larger, and I'd just be kind of interested in that.
Governor Hussaini.
Dr. Machen, the 4% that out-of-state students you have, do they pay 100% of the boat? I mean, do they pay everything out of state, or do they subject to the need base, and some of, as you say, 99% of need base don't pay? Or basically
If they
take care of
qualified for need-based financial aid, they would get it. And if they are a very attractive cohort, say a National Merit Scholar, we would recruit them in as well. But by and large, we are not able to recruit because of our high costs. They are not able to get in-state tuition. They're either here on, if they were able to get a scholarship, then they wouldn't have to pay it. But most of them, I would say, do pay it, yes.
You have a very loyal alums. Give you an example. My nephew is a graduate of University of Florida, and in 1989, I think, he was in Beijing, and he called me that if I could get him ticket to Florida State game, and I thought he was crazy. Fly and just watch the game and go back.
Played that in Beijing?
And the question is that these alums, lots of them that I have seen University of Florida, a lot of my staff are Florida graduate, and I always want Gators to win, because if they don't, when I come to the office, it's not a good day. And they are
Just
more...
think about my office.
most of these guys that I know, they give back to University of Florida, and in a very good size. Do you think that for us to be involved, meaning that we only have 4% from outside the state, do you miss in some of these people that come and graduate from University of Florida and go back, get their job, and forever they're Gators, and forever they give back to University of Florida by far more than the tuition you charge?
Well, first of all, I think our alumni giving rate is about 22%. Okay? Many of the privates who have the same kind of passionate alumni have significantly higher giving rates than that. The other dimension that you need to understand, it is true, we have a very successful financially and competitively athletics program, and many people give generously to that program. Only about 25% of the people who give to the athletics program also give to the academics program. I spend, and I think every president in this system spends, increasing amounts of time trying to find private resources. We are in the 5th year of a 7-year campaign, and I've raised $1.1 billion. A good year for me, an average year for me, I have to raise $200 million in private funding every year in order to meet the needs that we have out there. So we have lots of loyal alums, and they love us. But we do not have the kind of revenue stream that you would expect from passion and giving don't always come that close together.
Just last question. You have the rate of acceptance. Your requirement is going higher and higher and higher. Would that by itself will bring the rating of the school to become even a better school or better rated school than others?
People take note of it, but we're in a sphere where it doesn't matter anymore. We had 28,000 applications for the freshman class, and we hope to enroll 6,400. So the thing that is relevant and you watch is the quality of the students, most of whom, as I've told you, are Floridians. And the best and the brightest kids, comparable to any public university in the country, are choosing to come to the University of Florida. So I really don't think we can make, if I understood your question, we can't get any more gains by being more selective, or I don't know if you can get a better student body than we've already got.
Thank you.
Governor Martin.
This is another follow-up question regarding your universal tracking system. What is the advisor-student ratio?
I haven't computed that. Because we have advisors spread throughout the whole university, we have a central advising facility that has about 15 advisors in it, and they handle the bulk of the lower division, and they handle a lot of the universal tracking load. When you get outside, however, into the university, every department and every college has its own system of advisors. So I've listened to the other universities with interest as they've talked about their advisor to student ratio. We don't think of it in those terms. We think of what's necessary to make the tracking system work. And so what happens is when an area gets impinged and people talk to me and say, we need an extra advisor here because we're experiencing a load, we will take an advisor and we will put them there. So it's a different way of looking at the system, quite honestly.
Could I make a comment about the graduation rate? It is not apples to apples to compare a university with 93% full-time students to a university with 50% full-time students. An 82% graduation rate for our university is good, but it could be a lot better. For us, the number that I'm looking at is the 58% who graduate in 4 years, and I can't understand why. I've just told you they're the best and the brightest, that we don't have a higher 4-year graduation rate. But I would urge the board to be careful and consider the populations involved before you start comparing within the system on such variables as graduation rate, because it's not really quite fair when someone's having to work a lot more and has to take a smaller course load for them to graduate in the same time frame as a student who's going full time.
And your tracking system has been in place for how long?
For at least 15 years.
Okay. And one last question. Several months ago, I attended your Innovation Day that you had at the University of Florida, and you had maybe 500 or 600 people that were there talking about startup companies, and you had four, I think the highlight of the day, we had 4 UF graduates from all over the country that were presidents of the various companies and had multiple startups in their portfolio. And you talked about the need to be more entrepreneurial. Could you talk a little bit more about your iHub innovation program that you have?
With the amount of research we have, we are generating lots of scientific discoveries in the laboratories. The challenge is to get them from the laboratory to the public marketplace, and there's a big gap there. This innovation hub incubator we started yesterday is one way to take a small fledgling company and give it subsidized housing so that it can get on its feet. But ultimately, to benefit the state, we have got to get outside venture capital money to invest in those companies and build them out so that they stay in the state of Florida. So far this year, we've had over $140 million invested in UF intellectual properties just this year alone to try to take these companies from the laboratory on up. I think all the universities that are involved in research in this state are trying to go exactly the same direction. Some of them have a longer road to go is the only thing. And I think it's been one place where the legislature has been very sympathetic to us and has tried to help us. Enterprise Florida is out there, and I think there's a significant expectation now in the current leadership of the state that the new economy of Florida will be coming around through the universities, not so much from importing it from outside the state. And that's one of the fundamental pillars of New Florida.
Thank you.
Governor Tripp?
Do you get to control the course offerings online easier? You know, in other words, you take a degree online, we require you to go follow this track as opposed to being able to pick and choose when they're there. Could you tell us how that works?
Yes. At the graduate level, it's actually very easy because in general, graduate programs are highly prescribed. I mean, there is a track to follow. As we move into the undergraduate arena, it becomes a little bit more challenging. And so it is probably the case, and it already has become the case to a certain extent, as we create undergraduate distance education programs, we are going to offer them a more limited menu of options for courses than they would have if they were resident on the campus. They will have some options, but they will not have the full range of options that they do on the University of Florida campus.
Is that a better process for the student?
I wouldn't characterize it as better. Again, I think the key to remember is we're serving different populations of students with different proclivities and different abilities and different time and money constraints. So the students who are distance education students, oftentimes they're place-bound, they want to do things on their own time, they have other constraints on them. They often are a little bit more professionally oriented, so they tend not to be 18-year-olds who arrive at a campus and want to explore a lot of possibilities. They are often people who say, I know I want a business degree, or I know I want a degree in sport management, or I know I want a degree in microbiology. And so they go directly to that program, which takes them along that track.
One last follow-up, quick question. I think I remember in the reading that the average age of the student at, I think it was FAU or FIU, is 28. On the undergraduate level, 33 or 34 on the graduate. Could you compare that number to what your number is?
Certainly for the residential first time in college freshmen admitted to the University of Florida campus, the average age must be just about 18. Graduate students, we've never computed the average age of them. My guess is it's probably in 25 to 30-year-old range would be my guess. We have not even begun to look at statistics for the distance ed people, so I can't characterize that population for you in terms of age.
Governor Beard?
Your first-time student scholarship that you talked about earlier, I guess it was an opportunity scholarship. How are y'all funding that?
On my back, 100%.
That's what I thought.
You know, when this program started, the state put, I think, $6.5 million up for matching money for universities. And we end up getting about, I think, $1.7 million from the state on the match. But the match presumes that I raise an equal amount from private sources. So this year, we're estimating that the total private contribution amount that I have to raise is over $8 million. And we take 400 plus students a year, and we just graduated our first class. Interestingly, they're graduating at a much faster rate than the normal student. Interesting, isn't it?
And they're first-time students, and their family, they're the first student.
They have to be the first person in their family.
To go.
First of all, they have to be admitted to the university on their own ticket.
Great.
We do not consider them for the scholarship until after the admissions letters go out. And then we try to find the ones that are most needy. And remember, the family income cannot be greater than $40,000 per year, which is, by the way, greater than the federal limit, which I believe is for a family of four, $24,000 a year. But they have to be the first in their family, and they have to have a family income of less than $40,000.
I guess based upon what you just described, Dr. Matchin, where did the $40,000 number come from? Was that generated by the institution, or was that in the statute?
Since it's a private, since we're doing it, we could set it. We're very sensitive to what I call the working poor in this state. There are a lot of people who have no access to subsidized support because they work. Yet they work very hard and don't have enough income to make things really work out for them. So we wanted to set, some universities are able to set that bar at 60,000, and we wish we could. But we can't meet all the demand right now at 40,000. So it's simply a matter of money.
I truly hope more money.
I think at some point the state has to go back. It's a great value for the state of Florida. And I think at some point we have to go back to some kind of state support for this program.
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to...
Governor Colson.
I read in the Chronicle about some very positive, it appeared positive to me about the raises you gave to faculty and Differential was supposed to, one of the reasons that Differential was passed was to keep, retain, and recruit your top faculty. So I want to compliment you for having the courage to do something that is kind of contrary to what you might expect to be done right now in these tough economic times, because I think we have to take care of the faculty in order to keep all of our universities at the top. So thank you.
I have another question. On your tuition differential slide, when I guess that third bullet where it talks about the equivalent of 30% to be used for need-based student aid will be provided from other sources. Is that the opportunity scholarships we were just talking about? I guess
that's part of it. If you recall, and there was considerable discussion at this table by the governors about whether to allow that, the original idea was that 30% of the differential had to be set aside. And many of our institutions were already raising more than that every year. And so you all allowed us to do it. If you don't raise it, then we take the 30% out of the differential. But in years where we can show that we've raised it, we will leave the entire 30% from differential into the faculty hiring pot.
Didn't you tell us that it was easier for you to raise money from the community to assist people than it was maybe to do some other things?
Correct.
And if we took that opportunity away from you, it would just make it harder for you to raise money. I kind of remember that conversation.
Correct. Well, a lot of people are of the opinion that it's the state's responsibility to provide the bricks and the mortars and the faculty and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you say, well, why don't you give money for faculty endowed chair. They say, well, that's the state's responsibility. But when you tell them, I want to raise money to help someone who can't afford to go to college, it's a much easier sell, to be honest with you.
I remember that.
Yeah.
But the scholarship that you're getting from the new tuitions doesn't require first time.
No,
And,
no.
and so you
There
can get
are
it
no
to
restrictions
anybody.
on that, right.
Any other questions? Dr. Marshall?
If there's time, Madam Chair, I'd be curious or interested in hearing a little bit more about the Chancellor's idea that distance learning is something that ought to be undertaken as a community enterprise rather than one institution at a time. Is that fairly accurate, Frank?
It is, and not in every particular case. And here's a good example. The University of Florida provides, let's say, a world-class MBA program. And they want to market it under the aegis of the University of Florida and attach that brand to it. Let's face it, the University of Florida carries a significant cachet out there. But I'm thinking more along the lines of just the general undergraduate sorts of programming that everybody offers. And as we've heard, and I think we'll continue to hear, everybody wants to offer more of online. Rather than simply rely on each institution to develop the curriculum and the programming, I just think there's something to be said for pooling some of the system-wide resource. And instead of creating 5 good programs, how about one really great program that could then be marketed among the universities?
Well, that was very appealing to me, but I haven't developed any distance learning program lately, but the University of Florida has. It sounded to me, Joe, from your description as though some of those programs were pretty particularized or developed for a particular purpose related to some particular education program. So I would be curious to know, would you folks at the university be interested in joining forces with those from other universities to develop, to follow Frank Brogan's idea?
Well, many of our programs, as I mentioned, we have 52 full degree programs already online. Many of those are at the master's level and have been developed over the years. They're old programs in response to particular requests. For example, Eglin Air Force Base, we have a number of master's degrees in engineering that were developed specifically for that. Agriculture and IFAS, we have a number of degrees that were developed for specific markets. When we have gone into these markets, we have done very careful market studies. We have no intention of putting the whole spectrum of the University of Florida undergraduate experience online. We're looking for critical masses of populations that desire particular majors. And so that's what we want to do. That's one consideration. A second consideration, if you'll let me make one more point, is we are in the process of recruiting or engaging an external provider of distance education infrastructural services. We are in conversation with about 12 companies right now. We have an invitation to negotiate out. And all of those companies have been very clear with us. They would like to essentially engage with the University of Florida, precisely as the Chancellor said, to market the University of Florida brand with the distance education offerings, because they think that this would be a very effective recruiting tool. It would actually create the critical masses of students who would then seek to access some of our degrees.
Could I just follow up too, and we've talked about this earlier. Remember also that with, there are different styles of this distance online learning, but with many of the courses, they are very interactive with a faculty member at the other end of the computer, so to speak. So they are very, very time consuming, and we actually have to limit the enrollment because the faculty member can't keep up with all the students. So you can't be thinking about a model where the University of Florida has a really successful MBA, say program, and so we'll all use that one, and the other institutions won't develop them because they won't be able to meet the need if it is in fact one of those highly interactive ones. They would need all the faculty to be there interacting with the students on a daily basis. And
But if a program was developed and people were trained on how to utilize that particular program, you are breaking down one program into multiple parts, so you're also breaking down the time management issues with that faculty member interacting with their students.
well,
Correct?
I mean, that could be done, and I think that certainly faculty would enjoy assistance in terms of the actual development and the maintenance and the upkeep of these courses, keeping them current and things like that. But also remember that faculty at our level, we all have our own ideas about how we want to teach our courses, so handing me a packaged course and say, here it is, you teach it, is not what we do at our level, generally speaking.
Governor Duncan?
But I guess, and one of the things, and we've had a lot of discussion over time about this, and I know enough to know that this is a very complex decision and structure, and that one size does not fit all. But I do want to kind of think, and Chair Walsh just walked out, but with our shared services kind of task force, though, when you're negotiating a contract for some of the infrastructure, that's more of a business deal than it is, I think, if I understand it correctly, the academic side of the delivery. And that's where I would really love to see us at least explore, if you guys have the purchasing power to leverage it before another institution goes out and tries to buy the same technology support, is there a way we can at least start with that? And it may very well lead to some of these expanded offerings. And I know the Council on 100 and the Florida Chamber have talked a lot about how we can do this better and be more competitive, and the Pappas report talked about it. But I guess rather than always getting bogged down with the complexity of why it can't work, I'd love to find some of the places where it can be leveraged and tackle that.
If there's purchasing power to be gained, that would be great, because it is very expensive. But then you have to locate that infrastructure around the state at the sites that are engaging in this. You need I know at North Florida we have a small little staff that's trying to help faculty with the technology and things like that, and it has to be there.
And
Governor, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that to Governor Solano's point, there does need to be a critical mass. And so, for example, the company that deals with us may be inappropriate for the University of North Florida. They may need to choose a company of different scale to help them ramp up. But certainly our invitation to negotiate is an open process. They're public documents. It's all public information. And so we would be happy to share that type of information and to share the names of companies with any other campuses that are interested.
Governor Stavros?
President Matchett, riding on what Governor Tripp's comments originally yesterday concerning always looking for funds and not having enough funds for the various programs with our universities. I'd like to just know, I know that there are many foundations in our universities who have campaigns and who have raised considerable money for the universities, for the programs. I know your veterinarian program, which you are going to double approximately, is a very outstanding program, because I've got friends who've been wanting their students to go to the school and they just can't get in because there was no room. Have these foundations, as the campaigns helped, and is the state still giving matching funds? Because that was a great program which really helped. I know with the foundations that I was involved in at Florida State and USF, we needed that. Is it helping you at the University of Florida?
The foundation, when you think of a foundation, it's the way the state has broken down the private fundraising entities of all the universities. So I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
And believe me, if we could just sell our spots, we could make a lot of money. And we get offers of that type, but that's not the way it works. And grateful patients or grateful clients, in the case of veterinary medicine, are a great source of feedback to us as well. But you have to sell it more on the basis of what the university is and what it offers. And sometimes it's someone who went here and feels loyal and given back, someone who received a service from us, and sometimes it's just people who want to support higher education in the state, people who have no other ties to us. Our endowment now is about $1.1 to $1.2 billion. It's doubled in my time here. And we have worked very hard to raise money, and I told you that my bogey every year is about $200 million a year. Unfortunately, the matching grants program has been dormant now, Frank, for 3 years or 4 years? 4 years. This was a unique program in the state of Florida compared to any other state, where if a donor made a gift to endow a professorship or a scholarship or whatever, the state would match that 1 for 1, and that money would then go into your endowment. Another crucial program was the Cortellis Match program. If you were trying to build a building and you got a gift from a donor, the state would match that as well. These programs, due to the economic conditions we've faced the last 3 years, have not been matched. There's a huge backlog of SUS schools who have the monies collected for either buildings or endowments, right, Frank? I mean, it's hundreds of millions of dollars that we are backlogged on that. So we're not able and no longer use that as a selling point in trying to raise money, because I don't know if or when it'll ever come back.
How much of that money is at risk at going away because you committed matching funds?
Well, first of all, the endowments, we've had no one say, you promised a match, give me my money. We've had no one do that.
Okay,
and I believe there ought to be, and I was talking to Governor Rue about this the last time we were together at Council 100. There's a significant amount of money for the building match that just sits in accounts, because the requirements are you can't start the building, even though you got 50% of the money in an account, until you get the other 50% from the state. And those funds are not at risk in the sense that no one's taking them back. But if there could be a way that the state could figure out how to either bond for the match or guarantee the match, I think a lot of projects on many of our campuses could move forward. It might be something that this board want to look at as sort of an interim support strategy for higher ed.
You know, we could actually go in and find out, Tim, what the status is of just that category, President Manchin, how many buildings are sitting there not having been started because they don't have the rest of the money, and see what the grand total would be, that if somehow we could acquire it, you could move forward with all or at least a good amount of that construction. Because I'm sure that would be easy to get from the universities.
What I'm going to ask, I'm sorry to cut you all off, but if we continue to talk, you're going to eat into my break period, and it's just going to kill us for the rest of the afternoon. So pardon me for stopping everyone so bluntly.
Great presentation.
Hold on one second. I know that Governor Franklin, you had a question. I just want to get on the record, so at least we can know we can come back and address it later. Please go ahead.
I had a quick question on whether or not there were any studies done on the qualitative education in comparison to online courses and courses in the classroom. And the only reason I asked that is I'm pretty sure maybe the actual average letter grade being given out might be a little different, because taking an exam in a classroom, proctors, and no cell phones is a little bit different than taking it at home with, all type of resources available to you.
Do I have a moment to address that?
If it's just a moment.
But just a moment. First of all, University of Florida does not allow anyone to take any tests at home. All of the tests administered through distance education are administered face-to-face, so we can identify the student and make sure that they are only using authorized aids. Secondly, we haven't done any direct comparisons ourselves at the University of Florida, but there have been a number of studies reported through the Chronicle of Higher Education from various institutions that find that distance education courses, and especially hybrid courses, are actually superior to courses that are delivered solely in classrooms. So I think the jury is a little bit out on that, but there are certainly preliminary indications that illustrate that distance ed is completely valid and reliable way, an alternate mode to deliver education. And students have different learning styles, and we have to remain cognizant of that.
Chairman McGriff, thank you so much, Mr. Provost. Hold on one more second. Just one more second, guys. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to say hello if you'd like. Great.
Hello, goodbye.
And one incredibly important question we've got to end with. Is it possible that the University of Florida and Florida State could play for the national championship in Omaha in the World Series?
It absolutely is.
It is.
We're in the same bracket,
That's
and
right.
only one of us will make it to the championship game, though. So it will be the playoff to get into the championship game.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matchin. So with that, we're going to break until 3 o'clock. You got that? We're going to break until 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock.
Bill Huffkey, $30 million.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin in a few minutes.
I'd rather give it to you.
Are you getting close to the end? I'm getting ringing, okay?
All right, I'm going to start my meeting now. All right, good luck, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Well, I'd check with them.
No, it's not.
Check with them.
Sorry, just let you know. Just let you know. Let's get ready. I got two of these. I was just getting ready to hit it. We're about to go ahead and get started. Can I have the members of the board please take your seats?
No one has any other board chairman any questions.
Norman, the paper.
I have the clicker. I'm in command.
Yeah, that'd be good to see if we got any issues.
Should also add, I'm always the coolest one at any
Look at number of people. Have enough people. We're going to go ahead and get started.
I gotta go. See ya.
I'm pleased to see that Florida Atlantic University is now present at the front table, and very happy to see that Dr. Saunders is here to lead her team. Just welcome.